Hi everybody, good afternoon. I'm John Dyer, managing broker here, John Dyer School of Real Estate. This is our all things contract. We go through the whole contract a piece at a time, then we go through addendums, then we go through listings, and then we go back and start it all over again. So last week we started on new. So this week we're finishing up section 1 and hopefully get as much of section 2 and 3 as possible. I have no schedule. I literally go till I'm done. And sometimes I expand more on subjects than others. So last time it took, I think, 11 weeks to get through the contract. Hopefully we'll do it in that or less this time. Everybody got one of these? We're going to talk about starting the section. We left off last week at possession. I mean, the default is it's possession at close of escrow. Let me tell you something that all brokers hate. All brokers hate pre-possession and post-possession. Now, our hatred for pre-possession is substantially higher than our hatred of post-possession. The reason that is in pre-possession, you have someone living in someone else's house that hasn't actually paid for it yet. And people say it never goes wrong or this money's non-refundable. I've seen in my career 100 pre-possessions that went wrong and they had to get the people out of the damn house. It is a truly unnecessary evil to be avoided whenever possible, but there are situations where it simply has to happen. If it's over 7 days, don't use a pre or post possession agreement. It's over 7 days, create a residential rental agreement. Give the person in the house tenants' rights, the person not in the house landlord's rights, whichever side they're on. Make sure there's a deposit left in escrow. I've had people say, well, I'm not going to leave a deposit for my house after closing. I'm like, well, hell yeah, you are. It's not your house anymore. And what if you screw up? And by the way, I've seen someone in post-possession for 3 days take 6 weeks to get out. We also, if we ever do pre or post-possession, we really need to explain to our clients that this is an obligation they have to meet. Because that person that stayed there for 6 weeks caused all sorts of legal problems for lots of people. There were other transactions that didn't close. And these people happen to be lawyers, and I don't know what happened. That was 3 years ago. I bet they're still in court. So be very careful with that. If you ever do pre or post possession, that's one of those high liability areas. If you're not certain how to do it, what to do, if you have a document, that's one of those things. Do not hesitate to send it to me for review, to Larry for review. For those of you out there, you know, now Larry's the new DB, Larry, and so it's Larry at myhomegroup.com or jdyer at myhomegroup.com. We would rather review it and sign off on it than clean up the mess because you screwed it up and didn't send it to us. Like I said, it's a necessary evil. Also, possession. This is an argument that really was answered when everybody went to real estate school. The day of closing belongs to the buyer, which means if they record at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they own that house retroactively to 12:01 a.m. Sellers need to get the hell out of houses the day before closing. Having them crossing paths on closing day is a really, really bad idea. And people say, well, they don't have their money yet. Here's the deal. The reason closing day belongs to the buyer is because the proration the buyer pays for that day. The seller gets their proceeds eventually. But this business of my seller's not going to move out until recordation means your seller's going to be living in someone else's house. It's complete BS. It's a risk sellers have to take. If not, it better be clearly addressed in writing and everyone agrees to it. At least once a month I get the call, seller's just not moving out. Seller needed an extra day. Well, then you should have closed an extra day later. You never want someone in someone else's house. And there are some, you want to hear worst case scenarios? Let's see what's happened in someone else's house. Oh, weekend post possession. Seller had the weekend to get out, which used to be COE plus 2 used to be somewhat typical because in the old days we didn't have the internet, so you literally had to do things physically around closing, and it was a little more complicated. But a very nice house. Worst case scenario, seller's up on a ladder taking something down, falls and dies in what is now the buyer's house that he hadn't moved out of yet. And whose insurance is responsible? Who's liable? Can you sue someone for hurting yourself in their house that you used to own? The same as if you're showing a house and you fall and break your neck, you may be able to sue that insurance company, that seller's insurance company. So be very careful. make sure that the person in the house's insurance remains in force. That's not always easy to pull off, but otherwise you literally have, you move into my house a couple of days early and something goes wrong, that's on me, that's not fair. Be careful. All right. Also, keys, garage door openers, remotes, all that stuff. Have a standardized plan. Have a conversation with a listing agent before, if you're representing the buyer, have a conversation with the buyer's agent before, and have an everything drawer. I mean, I don't know how complicated that is. For me, most of my career, I literally thought that was a standard thing. Because 80% of the houses I've closed, the listing agent has the seller put all the crap, warranties and you know, stuff on appliances and books and the garage door and the extra keys and the key to the fence. Have a place and have it there for them. And if you're a selling agent, listing agent, do an inventory and make sure it's there, because it's unfair how many garage door openers buyers agents have to buy, because the seller, they're not malicious. They just pack them and take them off and then get to Minnesota and go, ah crap, we got the garage door opener. By then the buyer probably already had to buy a new one, and guess who usually buys those? Also, mailbox keys are a big deal. Make sure to get the mailbox keys if there's a locked mailbox, and if there's no key available, there's two ways to handle it. And I am a cheap son of a you-know-what. I love to keep my money exactly where it belongs, and that's in my wallet. Paying $45 to $60 to the stupid post office to change that lock is ridiculous. If you catch the mail guy there, and you can show that you own the property, all you need is a $6.45 lock from Home Depot or Lowe's. You can install it with a screwdriver in about 13 seconds. So it'll save you 40, 50 bucks. I like to give buyers tips like that because my buyers are usually pretty cheap as well. And I've actually, for people out of state, have volunteered to catch the mailman and change it for them. And they love me for that. So it's, you know, something that I will even do. And typically I won't touch a screwdriver.
But how can you verify that you're the owner?
I have a copy of the listing and the information that shows I'm the agent, and the HUD one that shows that it closed. All right. Addenda. Addenda Incorporated. You know what addendum stands for? Addendum terms. Okay. Additional clause addendum. Please use that. The additional clause addendum covers some waivers and stuff, and the beauty of the additional clause addendum is it's written by lawyers and means you don't have to be smart and write a good clause. Most everything that you're going to deal with that's unusual is on that addendum. When we get back to addendum, we'll cover it again. Buyer contingency addendum, if it's contingent upon sale or contingent upon successful close of their house, you must use that. I saw someone say, I don't like that, they wrote it in. Only problem is it's from another company, but we're the listing agent. The way they wrote it in on the contract made absolutely no sense to me, because it said it was contingent upon getting an offer and then said it was an escrow contingent upon closing. They literally contradicted themselves. And they're all smart, didn't want to use the addendum. I don't like the addendum. I want to keep the paperwork simple. That's just idiotic. Use the addendum when it's available. Might as well use AAR's lawyers. They write pretty good stuff. Domestic water well, mandatory for any type of well. HOA addendum. Please get the HOA addendum filled out, page 1, when you list the property. And here, let's go way out on a limb with this one. Put it on the documents tab, so I have a nice, pretty package to deliver to you when my buyer writes contract on your listing. Lead-based paint disclosure required for all properties built before 1978. Why it doesn't say all properties built through 1977, I don't know, but it's anything built 77 or older, lead-based paint is required. It is the one form in all of your practice that can never be done in counterpart. We need live signatures for everybody. Thank God they now let us do digital signatures. They literally, for years after digital came along, required wet. If the broker seems like we're a little fascist when it comes to enforcement of lead-based paint, it's really simple. That's not a real estate form. That's a federal Environmental Protection Agency compliance form and disclosure form. I don't know about you guys, but the EPA, let's see, federal government, their attorneys, the Department of Justice, you have that nasty little word in there, environmental. You have a scary thing called lead paint that makes children speak sideways. It's a pretty big deal, and here's the real big deal for us. We hate them. Personally, I don't care if anyone ever did a lead-based paint except for one reason. If we're caught having one filled out incorrectly or not in the file for a home built before 1977, at 77 or older, on a lease or a purchase contract, that's an $11,000 fine per occurrence. And they can walk through that front door with a warrant and review our files, and they have fined brokers in California. One broker in California I know of, they fined them over $1 million. So if we seem like we're crazy about it, it's because we don't have a choice. We all wish you'd go away tomorrow. Loan assumption? All right. Loan assumption. Now those are two words I haven't used in a long, long time. But we've gone from 3 1/4 interest to high 4s, low 5s, which means if I have a 3 1/4 interest, you might want to try to assume it. If you have a hot loan, before you say, hey, assumable, whatever, that's cool. Assumption now requires complete qualification. Under TRID, under CFPB, wraps are, for the most part, illegal. There's ways to do them, but I wouldn't touch one as a brokerage. I advise that we don't allow them here. But assumptions can happen. Just make sure you know if the loan is assumable. Because trust me, if I'm looking at 5 1/4 and you got a 3 1/4, I'm going to pay you more for your house because I really want that low interest rate and those low payments. And take out a calculator. The difference between 3 1/4 and 4 3/4 on a $100,000 loan is about $147 a month in payment. That's no small stick right there. All right. Oh, on-site wastewater treatment facility. That's disclosure. That thing for the sewer. It also says that if there's a problem, it's already agreed to spend up to 1%, and it's where it's disclosed to everybody that there's a requirement. Again, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. It ain't a real estate requirement. Requires an inspection, certification, etc. Within 6 months of close of escrow, and the seller is supposed to pay for that. Seller financing. Seller financing is I'm seeing a little bit more of it. I'm seeing a lot. We're doing a lot of land deals now because people are trying to buy land and build. A lot of seller financing there. It's a great thing. If you've never done it, don't even touch it until you talk to one of us because there's it's pretty easy, but it has some really gnarly landmines in there that can go extremely wrong. So talk to us if you've never done it. Be aware, a seller, typical seller, can do one seller financing deal a year. And it's between buyer and seller. As long as they're owner occupied. If they're an investor that's doing a flip and they're doing a seller carry, that requires seller financing addendum number 2. And in that case, other than owner occupied, simple deal, one a year, federal law requires a full freaking underwriting package. You literally have to go to a lender and hire them to put together an underwriting package for you. I haven't actually had to deal with one yet. Because I guarantee you as a broker, there's going to be lots of questions. Because I don't know how it's going to work, so I don't even know how to give advice other than saying, read the law. It's really clear. Which is bad because seller financing used to be used for a seller to take the risk on a buyer that can't qualify. It was a win-win. But then again, you know, the brilliance of Washington shows itself again. Other addendum that applies, okay? If you have additional terms you had to write out, make sure you reference it. Now, what's that? Did I skip something? Oh, I guess I skipped short sale. I hope I never see one again. If you're doing a short sale, you need a short sale addendum, and it's, you know, it says that the buyer can back out, all that stuff. I'm happy to say we're doing 2 to 3 short sales a month out of 700 plus transactions, as opposed to 400 short sales a month out of 700 transactions. Actually, no, nobody was doing this volume of business back then. But if you've never done a short sale, That is a twisted sister right there. That is a weird transaction because you literally, seller's selling a house for whatever, but it's all subject to an all-powerful third party called a bank. There's a lot of brown nosing, there's a lot of paperwork, it takes a little longer. If you haven't done one, I recommend if you get a short sale listing, you co-list or refer to a short sale specialist because it's not worth what it's going to take you to learn now, a skill that hopefully will become incredibly obsolete really, really fast. All right. Section 1G, fixtures and personal property. John Dyer's definition of a fixture: if it's glued or screwed, it's stuck and it stays. Simple as that. If it's attached. The important thing with fixtures is where to err. Better to treat something like a fixture that's not than to not treat something like a fixture and it is. So if you're not sure, if you think it might be personal property, it might be a fixture, treat it like a fixture and address it in the contract. So if it's really, you don't know if it's supposed to stay, but you don't want to, but it's kind of stuck, and you're not sure what that means, then treat it like a fixture and exclude it. That takes the problem away. All right, let's talk about fixtures and personal property, the list. This list is also on the listing, verbatim. It looks just like this on the new ER. Make sure you go through this with your sellers, and if there's anything they plan to take, you put it in the listing, but also make sure you are on top of it, because if I put chandelier doesn't stay in the listing, and we get a purchase contract and it does not exclude chandelier right here, the chandelier stays. There's nothing in MLS that in any way can alter the terms of the purchase contract. MLS is BS. Okay, it's an advertising format. At the bottom it says subject to change, blah blah. I've had people say, "Well, it said in MLS that they're leaving." I said, "Yeah." And then you're a dumbass, wrote a contract, didn't include it in there, so they were giving it to your buyer, and you were nice enough to give it back. Well, that's not fair. Well, it's not fair that your buyer hired an idiot for an agent. Something I do say often. All right, here we go. Here's the things that are included. I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of them we know. Built-in appliances, you know. Obviously, a range oven to pull out. That's considered a fixture, okay? Ceiling fans and remote controls, even though the remote's not attached, it's part of the ceiling fan. By the way, they're $48. I know mine had to buy one a while back. Central vacuum hose and attachments. Again, the hose and attachment aren't fixtures, but they're part of it, okay? Draperies and window coverings. Make sure your sellers know that. Number one reason I get calls with pissed off buyers because something was taken, it's the draperies and window coverings. Some people get very attached to their drapes. That's fine, but make sure it's excluded because those things ain't cheap. The one that kills me, people that remove mini blinds. Where the hell are you going to find another house that happens to have the exact mini blind as the one you're selling? They take them out and sell them in garage sales. If you see a house for sale with a pending sign, they're having a garage sale and they're selling mini blinds, walk up and say, "Don't do it, don't do it." Because it's amazing how much more expensive things are when a buyer wants it replaced after closing. You know, "Oh, I don't just want mini blinds, I want the nicest mini blinds." And small claims courts in this state have been very, very friendly to buyers under this contract because it's as black and white as it gets right here. All right, fireplace equipment affixed. If you represent a seller and you take a listing with a fireplace, please determine whether or not it's affixed. And here's how you do it. You'll walk up and you try to move it. And make no assumptions. And the fireplace tools, they don't stay. The screen doesn't stay. In the old days, it was considered a fixture even though it wasn't attached. It's not that easy. You come to my house, you look at my fireplace, you look at my fireplace screen, it literally is such a perfect fit. It is so flush, it not only looks like it's attached, it looks like it was built with the house. Only difference is, I can walk up and go. Walk out the door with it. It's completely not a fixture. And it's also about $400. And since we're the poor saps that end up paying for that stuff after closing when it goes away, I would make sure you get it right. All right, floor covering, blah, blah, yeah, garage door openers, we know that, might just jump around. Satellite, meat and dishes, etc. If they're affixed. Make sure you notes your set. Yeah?
The fake logs.
What?
How about the fake logs in fireplace? Sometimes the owner will take the fake logs, You know what I'm talking about?
If they can, if they're attached, they stay. But if you can pick it up, if it's one of those plug-in ones,
No,
you know,
they look like fake logs.
Right.
It's got the fake tinsel
Yeah.
and everything.
yeah, those aren't attached, so those would go. The little holder for your wood, I don't know what you call that thing, would go because it's not attached.
Oh.
Although, I don't know why people, again, why would someone want to take one? Well, the odds you're going to find exactly the same size fireplace. All right, let's see, mailbox, etc. Moving down. Outdoor fountains and lighting. There's a thing with lights now that I don't know the answer to. I cannot tell you whether the stab in the ground solar lights that are really cool that everyone's using. You've seen those? They're awesome. People around their backyard and they're really cool. I can't tell you if that's a fixture or not. If I had to make the call, I would call it a fixture because it's attached to the ground. But on the other hand, you can walk right up and go pull it right out of the ground. Again, because I don't know the answer, I always go with fixture because then I'm going to handle it and make sure it's dealt with. I do like those things. They're pretty cool. Let's see. Outdoor landscaping, shrubbery. Neat. That's a Monty Python thing, never mind. Here's the deal. They not only have to be there, and this is my June speech. Every time I talk about this time of year, they have to be alive. Make sure your cellar does not turn the water off to the yard in the summer in Arizona. It takes about 12 minutes for a lawn to burn out. And some some people that got some really nice shrub, but they're not low water, they're not xeriscape, and they'll die in a week. If they're dead, the cellar's going to have to replace them, and especially the grass. And I tell this story because you want to, this is worst case scenario. Beautiful backyard, garden park back, one of those, backyards like a park it really was. Gorgeous, perfect roll out sod, gorgeous tip grass. Dead as can be. All 10,000 square feet of it. Now, I don't know if you bought any sod lately. I hadn't gone and bought roll out sod in a few years, but when I bought it a few years ago, that stuff's expensive. In this case, it cost the listing agent, thousands of dollars, because here's the problem. The listing agent turned the water off thinking they were doing a seller a favor. You cannot make any alteration to a property. You can't turn the power off, you can't turn the power on. You can't turn the water off, you cannot turn the water on. You cannot do anything like that without written instructions from your client. It's not our house. All these people go, here's what I do for my cellar. Half the things people say, this is what I do for my cellar, they legally cannot do that without their seller's instructions. You don't tell your seller what you're going to do, you ask them what they want you to do. Never go out on a limb and turn water off. Because that agent, I'm pretty sure it ate the majority of their commission up. And I like that agent. There was another company, but I know him well. Shutters and awnings, speakers if they're flush mount. That's really simple. If there's a hole in the wall the speaker goes in, that's flush mount. We had somebody take fancy Bose speakers. They says it wasn't flush mount. But yet when they took it out, there was a big hole in the wall. Their argument was they never put the screws in. They literally, it was so well, it just slid right in. So they slid it right out. That stayed, okay? And that, by the way, those were some really, really expensive full house Bose setup. And that, what's wrong with people? You walk around the house, I saw a video, they go around the house and there's just big rectangle holes all through the house. That was a cool system, which I understand why they wanted it, but no. All right, storing windows and doors, gas stoves, wall, etc. Timers, if they're attached. Cap, towel, curtain, drapery rods. Yes, those rods have to stay. Wall-mounted TV brackets and hardware. I always make a big deal about this because the brackets stay, the television doesn't. Tell your sellers to leave the bracket, and here's why. Because I've pulled one of those things out of a wall. If they take it out, they have to make that wall pretty again. And if you've ever dealt with those brackets, they don't have little tiny screws. They got big into the stud because they're holding up a very heavy piece of equipment that flops. So if you take it out, the cost of making that wall pretty again is almost always going to exceed the cost of getting a new one. And as your sellers need one, you want to take it out, that's fine. Plus, if a seller, if they're going to take it out, they need to take it out before they put it on the market, and then they don't have a TV. I love those things.
So the speakers too, they have to take those out before they put it in the market. They can't like write in the listing.
Oh, you could write in the listing excludes and counter in the contract. But if it's in the listing, that doesn't mean anything. You would have to counter in the contract. Flush mount speakers do not stay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Any of this is negotiable. We're talking about the default position. And the problem is, I've seen a couple of cases where it was malice on behalf of the seller. They didn't like the deal, didn't close on time, they were pissed at the buyer, so they took stuff that they really probably shouldn't have. Usually it's just they don't know any better. And if they don't know any better, that's on who? Moi, or you. All right. Water misting systems, etc., window, screen, door, sunshades, yeah, blah, blah. That's if they're there. Myth. You don't have to replace sunshades. I had someone yell and scream at one of my agents that, that house has no screens. It has no shades. You can't sell a house. You can't legally sell a house without screens on the windows. By the way, that's baloney. That's completely not true. You'd be amazed how often I hear the term, it's illegal to do that. There's so many things in our contract that are legal issues, but there's almost nothing in here that's illegal. Illegal means you're actually breaking a law. It's a breach. It carries liability. It's not legally smart. You take on legal risk, but don't use the word illegal, because illegal is like you can't shoot your client in the foot with a pistol. That's illegal. Often justified, but never legal. And I look around the room and raise your hand if you've ever thought about it. Anyone who doesn't raise their hand, I'm going to say, welcome to real estate. Your day's coming. All right. If owned by the seller, the other things stay. Alternative power systems, obviously they're talking about solar, in-ground pool, hot tub equipment, and all the stuff that goes with it. Mechanical cleaning systems. Verify that the cleaning system belongs to the owner. I've run into the situation several times over the last year and a half. The pool service provides the cleaning system as part of their service. They basically lease them out because they had an old crappy one. So they say, you know what, we're going to upgrade your thing so you can pay us an extra $15 a month and you get that. But when it transfers, they have every right to get their stuff back. And by the way, you want a problem? Those things are really, really expensive, considering what you get. 60 feet of hose and a couple of plastic balls cost you $1,100. I love the technology though. Security, fire alarm systems, etc. If you're Simply Safer, like I am, my lady introduced me to Simply Safe. I heard it advertised on the radio. I cannot be a bigger fan. When ADT calls me after a closing, I hate those sons of guns. Well, we want to give you $50 gift card, blah, blah. Here's what I say. Something yourself, I'm a Simply Safer. You figure out what the first word is. And why I bring Simply Safe up is because it's really unique. My girlfriend, she recently moved. She had Simply Safe, she loves it, brought it with her. She used it around the house, took it out. It took her 10 minutes to take it down. They're completely portable. They're way cool. You install them yourself. I'm a big fan. But because they are taped or basically glued to the wall temporarily, they're a fixture and would need to be excluded. Okay? And again, recently we had someone take theirs out because they said, well, it's a pop-off. Well, you have to do something to pop it off. And it definitely has to stay. And you're welcome, Simply Safe. I'll be looking for my check for the free advertising in the mail. All right. Additional personal property included in the sale. This is where you list the things that are personal property. The standard, the typicals. Fridge, washer, dryer. Okay?
Do you have to put the name brand or like color or like?
There's all sorts of ways to do it. There's people that put on the premises in the kitchen on date of acceptance. Okay? That's fine. If you're including any appliances, take your smartphone and take inventory. And because smartphones don't just take cool pictures, they timestamp them. So you have proof that what was there then. I've had people that have literally written LG, French door, stainless steel, model number XY347, serial number, blah, 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 blah. You know what? You can't overdo it. So as far as you want to go to protect your client, vacant houses is where this becomes a problem, because quite simply people steal them. And you need that evidence because they have to substitute like for like. So they can't say what was stolen and then go down to, Home Depot and buy the cheapest old apartment fridge. I've actually seen someone do that. Anybody have your first apartment fridge that literally came up to your chest right here and this wide? And yeah, and they put one of those in a spot for a regular size refrigerator. Needless to say, it caused consternation and difficulty, and they ended up with a little fridge that they didn't have any use for and had to buy a new one.
So having the photos is enough?
Pardon me?
Just having the photos is enough?
Well, you reference on here, on the premises as of date of acceptance, or you can be more specific, LG stainless steel, but on the premises as the date of acceptance. And the photos are just in case someone screws with it, then you have time-stamped evidence to say, oh, no, that's not what was there, put it back. Yeah. Because people do switcheroos. People do switcheroos on a regular basis. I've known people, they bought a new house, and they got the refrigerator included, and it was kind of crappy, and then sold their house with a really good one. So they thought, hey, they said fridge and switch them out. Completely inappropriate. And we need evidence to protect our clients in that situation. That's obviously a court thing, but you got a timestamp. I would tell my client, don't go to court, write a freaking check. All right. Other personal property, otherwise addressed. There's, other things that are not unusual. Patio furniture is one of the more common pieces of personal property. You need to be specific. Okay, you don't put patio furniture. You put patio table, 4 chairs and cushions, 3 loungers. You have to be specific, because patio furniture, just that term can literally be 1 chair. And you can say currently on the premises, and they can say, well, that wasn't patio furniture, that was indoor furniture that got put out back. You'd be surprised how people weasel. The other one that's not terribly unusual, especially for people moving across country, is pool tables. And by the way, if you've ever had a pool table, it's awesome for a while, but they cost more to move than they do to replace. And once you move one, it's never ever level again. So people leave them. Make sure you cover that. Gas grills in the backyard. Now here's something you need to understand, because I'm a big fan of piped in gas for a grill. Now I have propane because I'm in a neighborhood that was built during the moratorium. But I love piped in gas for a home grill. It's amazing. You never have to go to the stupid store and get those tanks refilled or switched out. You have much higher pressures. You can jack up your BTUs. But as soon as you attach that pipe, that is not personal property. You made it a fixture because it's attached to the house, to the gas. Okay? Small, that sounds like a difference without a distinction. That's definitely a difference with a clear distinction. Okay. Any questions? Cool. All personal property included is for no monetary value. It's a throw-in. You can create issues with the whole throw-in thing. And I mean that when it comes to value and appraisal. A lot of condos in this town are Airbnbers now, and they trade them. They sell them completely furnished. By the way, I freaking love Airbnb. Again, another commercial. But they come fully furnished, and they'll say fully furnished, and they're going to go get a loan, and it says for no monetary value, but the appraiser walks through and it says everything's fully furnished and realizes that there's like 10 grand worth of stuff in here. That's no monetary value. I think that's a price issue. I need a price adjustment. If you're doing fully furnished, don't do no monetary value. If you're doing a pretty good list of, I call the living room furniture, don't do for no monetary value, even if it's a throw-in. Put by separate bill of sale, negotiated between buyer and seller for $1. And don't put the $1 in the purchase contract. Simply have that negotiated. and do a bill of sale. By the way, we can't do bills of sale. We're not legally licensed or allowed to do that anymore. Thank God. I used to have to walk around a condo and write down every towel, everything, and I had to create a bill of sale. We're not allowed to do that anymore. Thank you. But by separate bill of sale, and then if it's in, they don't want any money for it, make it for $1. And half the time they do that, guess what never happens? They never pay the dollar. Nobody cares. But that makes it extra contractual. All right, any questions? Lease things that are not included in the sale need to get taken out. Seller has to disclose to the buyer if they're assuming the lease, all lease documents for solar, or some other stuff, some alarm systems, within 3 days, and the buyer has time to review that. If you put a property on the market that's got leased solar, leased alarm system, leased whatever, make sure the seller has all the documents ready for when you get an offer, if it's something the buyer has to assume. And with solar, have fun. I love Solar City. I've never dealt with them. I've never done a solar deal with Solar City, but I love them as a broker because it actually crossed their mind that people might sell the house they put on that stuff on the roof. Some of the other ones, like, oh, wait a minute, we're not really prepared for a transfer. And some of them have some really, really jerky attachment to them. I've seen the situation. It's heartbreaking. People are fully qualified for a $400,000 house, and the leasing company for the solar wouldn't qualify them for the solar lease. Wait, unless they paid an extra $5,000 in security, because they figured that would hedge their bet, and they'd be much more likely to pay for it. I don't know about you guys, I call that extortion. But guess what? Absolutely within their power to say, you can't assume this, which tear it down and give it back, or move it. Yeah. All right. This is an all-cash sale. Section 2 does not apply. Go to Section 3. But we're not going to go to Section 3. If this is an all-cash sale and that's the case, you must have proof of funds, period. It can be a bank account, if you use bank account information, or Schwab account or whatever. Please black out the account numbers. I review those things all day, every day. A third of the ones I get, $745,000 in their Charles Schwab, and they took out 35 grand last month and put in 140 the month before that, and their account number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Their name. Holy crap, why not just put their social security number on there? I mean, come on, protect your clients. The information that matters is the name and the money. I can tell. I've actually saw one that just blew me away. I saw proof of funds for a $200,000 house. $84 million. Deal closed. I've seen some millions. That's the first one I've ever seen that you'll get and you go, wow, adopt me. All right, financing. I didn't have to look. AAR pre-qualification form is attached and incorporated herein by reference. Was I close? What did I just say? AAR pre-qualification form. I have to kick a file on a regular basis 2 or 3 times a day because people include a pre-qual from the bank. Quicken Loans will not do our pre-qual. Wells Fargo doesn't like to do our pre-qual. B of A, Bank of America, a bunch of assholes. I get that confused. Does not do our pre-qual. The buyer, the pre-qualification form is a buyer disclosure form, not a lender disclosure form. You and the buyer can take that Quicken form and fill it out with everything that they have, or you need to go on Section 8 and put line 69 is hereby deleted, shall not apply. Seller accepts pre-qual letter from Quicken Loans, Wells Fargo. Piece of cake. What you can't do is not alter the contract and not deliver an AAR because you literally, ready for this? You don't have a contract. When you fill out anything in Section 2 and there's a loan, that pre-qual becomes page 12. Simple as that. And by the way, the pre-qual must be signed. 60% of pre-quals I review are not signed, which means they mean absolutely nothing. So that's like a SPUDS that's not signed by a seller. A disclosure document without a signature is a what the heck. All right.
It doesn't have to be signed by the lender?
No.
No?
We can't require a lender to do anything.
Okay.
Now, do I want it signed by the lender? Yeah. Do I want it completed by the lender? Yeah. Does it piss me off that lenders won't do that for us? Yeah. But but then again, if I'm an out-of-state lender in, say, California, I'm not going to fill out compliance forms for another state. I wouldn't do it. So there are situations where it makes perfect sense. Quicken Loans, guess what? There ain't no people. Quicken Loans is a fancy algorithm that loans lots and lots of money, but there's no one to actually do it. So it makes sense in certain circumstances.
Where did you say that you would fill in if they were going to accept a Quicken loan? Where?
I would go to section 8 in the additional terms.
Okay.
And just simply, line 69 is hereby deleted and shall not apply.
Got it. Thank
Seller accepts Quicken Loans pre-qual letter in lieu of AAR pre-qual, which is fine. There's really not much difference. Where you really come into a problem is we're going to talk about LSU here in a minute. All right, section 2B, or section not 2B. Buyer's obligation to complete the sale is contingent upon buyer obtaining loan approval without prior to document, also known as PTD. Conditions no later than 3 days prior to the close of escrow. Date for the loan described in the AAR loan status update or the pre-qual form, whichever is delivered later. In bold, no later than 3 days prior to COE, buyer shall either sign on loan docs, deliver escrow notice of loan approval without PTD and date of and receipt of closing disclosure from lender, or deliver inability to close. Okay? Notice of inability to close. If you represent a seller, you have a fiduciary duty to issue a cure notice on day 2 before close of escrow if they don't sign day 3. Never let someone enter into potential breach for any condition of our contract without issuing a cure notice. You're literally a bad agent and breaching your fiduciary. It's not an insult. It's not a punch. People say, well, a cure notice is a gut punch. A cure notice is a counter punch. Any boxers in the room? What's a counter punch? That's when you hit back. The gut punch was a buyer that didn't sign loan docs. Okay? They're the ones that screwed up. All a cure notice does is says, hey, you know what? You didn't do what you said you're going to do. I'm going to give you 3 days to keep your commitment, or I have the ability to cancel. Not cancel, just the ability. But this business of, I hate curing people, makes no sense to me. Your duty is to your client, not to keep everyone happy. Alrighty then. Unfulfilled loan contingency notice. This contract shall be canceled and buyer entitled to return of earnest money if, after diligent good faith effort, buyer is unable to get loan approved without PTD condition and delivered notice of inability to get the loan 3 days prior to close of escrow. If buyer fails to deliver such notice, seller may issue a cure notice and 3 days later cancel. Okay? Another thing about that, a lot of people when they get down and they haven't done it 3 days prior, they're going to go, well, we need more time. We want an extension. There's absolutely no reason a seller would ever sign an extension. They're not required to. The contract has a continuation on it. Why would you issue a cure and then sign an extension? Issue the cure, and then if they want the extension signed, and I got a rule, extensions are renegotiation. The buyer's asking for something. And here's what's really screwed up and pisses me off. Agents consider the extension more time to qualify. No, the extension is for more time to close. Okay? I'm not going to give you a week more to get me a loan denial letter. Bullshit. You can give me a loan denial letter, you give it to me today after I issue a cure. You want an extension? No extension should ever be given by a seller without earnest money being non-refundable. It's a give and take. If you're giving the buyer more time, they're taking the risk. If you're so sure you're going to close, but you only need 5 more days to do it, put your money where your freaking mouth is. I don't understand people say, well, I've never. I had someone say, I've never asked. I couldn't. I could never ask another agent to make their buyer's earnest money non-refundable for an extension. I'm like, well, then you're a horrible agent because you're worried more about the other agent and the buyer than your client. Guess what our job is? Take care of our client. Be fair and honest with them, but our client comes first. And how can you say you're serving your client if you advise them to give an extension only to find out a week later they got to put their freaking house off back on the market because the buyer got loan denied? Okay.
Can you ask for more earnest?
Absolutely. And actually, an agent called me the other day and said, I can't believe they're doing this. This has to be illegal. Says we're asking for an extension. They want the earnest money not only non-refundable. They're asking for a second extension. The first extension, they made the earnest money non-refundable. Second extension said, we'll give you another extension, but we want you to double the earnest money non-refundable. I said, can they do that? That sounds horrible. Not only can they do it, that's how I teach it. Yeah, you want a second extension? Jack it up. You're not really concerned about it? You think they're playing games with you? You do an FHA, you're putting 3% down. Let's go ahead and you deposit your entire down payment to show good faith that you're going to close and make it non-refundable. Nothing. You can do anything you want, and you should do that which most protects your client. I'm not going to say it's your job not to give a damn about the other side, but it's not your job to take into consideration their feelings. You take into consideration their financial and legal position. And if their financial and legal position is they ain't got their money yet, make them put skin in the game.
But you do have to ask your buyer or seller that you're working with to ask for more earnest money, right? You can't ask that as an agent, right? You have to ask your seller.
We can't ask anything as an agent.
Right.
We literally are not allowed to think. We're allowed to do what the hell we're told. Yeah, no, obviously I'm going to advise my seller that. I'm going to suggest it. The seller says, no, I'm fine, I don't care, we'll get more time. I'm going to say, you're an idiot, sign here. All right. Interest rate funds, this is basically buyers that if they're qualified and they have a CD, closing disclosure, but then they can't come up with a down payment, that's not non-qualification, okay? That's a material breach, subject to cure. 3 days later they ain't come up with the money, they should and will lose their earnest money. If they're, especially now, oh God. For so many years, we had it so easy. Why lock your loan? Interest rates have been moving between 3 1/4 and 3 3/8 for 6 years. You know, we're pretty cool. Now, interest rates are moving. And we're in a market, if you're watching the bond market, and I used to teach this to everybody, but I haven't done it in years because it really didn't matter, because interest rates on homes kind of went away from the bond market. They are running right with the bond market now. You need to understand the T-bills, especially the 10-year Treasury, because if you watch it on Monday, you know exactly what's going to happen to mortgage rates on Wednesday. It's a warning. But your buyers need to take locking interest rate very, very seriously, because I've seen people back in the day that, you know, they took the gamble and rates went up 1.5. We had some major rate jumps in the late 90s and in the 80s for me. And they did not lock their loan, and they end up not being able to qualify for the interest rate, even though they were qualified for the loan. Now in this case, they got their money back because they had a good realtor and a really good broker fighting for them, actually making an argument he didn't necessarily believe in, which I'll fight for your client even if I think they're wrong. I'm going to try and get their money back, even though I don't think they deserve it because that's my job, but yeah. All right, loan status update. Buyers shall deliver to the seller a loan status update with a minimum of lines 1 through 40 completed, okay? That's page 1, essentially, okay? Describing the current status of the loan, and it must be delivered within 10 days. Not on the 10th day, but on or before, okay? Concept is the lender updated LSU broker, etc. upon additional ones upon request. The first LSU must have lines 1 through 40 complete. It also must have lines, we're going to talk about this in a minute, line 34 to 36 or 33 to 35, I'm having a moment of cerebral flatulence. Not only complete, but it has to be yes or not applicable. It can't be a no. That means they need to have their tax return and stuff done. When you get an LSU as a seller, please look at the damn thing. It's not like it used to be. Here's what we used to do with LSUs. We'd open our transaction file, we'd get an email, and we'd click it, and we'd drag it in the file and go back to work. Now you really need to vet those things, because if those lines aren't complete, lines 1 through 40, and those check yes or are not applicable, then you need to cure it. Also, the end of this says they'll give you more upon request. You cannot cure any LSU but the first one, because a request is not a condition of the contract. It's an asking someone to be nice on demand. If you want additional LSUs, which I do, I typically like to counter. Buyer shall deliver additional LSU every 7 days after delivery. The first LSU, second LSU shall have lines 1 through 47 complete. Third LSU shall have lines 1 through 50. I believe it's 54 complete. Guess what that means? 24. If they deliver on day 10, 24 days from acceptance, they have to have their closing disclosure. Or you have the ability to cure them before they ever get to signing loan docs. It's called representation. I didn't do my P's, did I?
Say that again?
Pardon me?
Say that last part again?
Literally, you require additional LSU every 7 days,
Mhm.
and if they don't deliver one, you can literally cure them on that long before you ever get to the closing disclosure issue, and that would put a lender's feet to the fire.
If they care. I mean,
What? Do what?
if the lender cares, some lenders don't care.
I know. I have a trap door I want them all to sit over. You don't care about the timing? You're gone. Wouldn't it be fun if we could have like a trap door in every house? We could invite people we don't like over and send them wherever.
Spot that. Spot that.
But then no one would come to my house. Like, Dyer's got that trap door going. I ain't going anywhere near his house. No, I didn't do my P's, man. That's how I start this class. I'm going to jump back. You have a fiduciary duty to do perfect paperwork. Not okay paperwork, not good paperwork, perfect paperwork. You need to practice potentially paranoid, prepared, proactive problem prevention. Because problem solving is a skill for losers. It means you didn't do your job, because if you let a problem happen, that's not doing your job. Your job is to be an umbrella and make sure nothing ever gets to your client. All right, section 2F. How are we doing time-wise?
356.
Right on. All right. Loan application. On section 2F, just write the word idiot. Just black it out. Because this says your buyer hasn't talked to a lender yet, which means you're showing houses to an unqualified buyer, and your buyer's trying to buy a house having no idea they can buy the damn house. That makes you and your buyer what? Idiots. Ignoramuses. All right, loan processing during escrow. And here's where it adds to the loan, LSU. After receipt of loan, the buyer shall provide lender with notice of intent to proceed, etc. That's between the lender and the buyer. And provide lender all requested signed documentation listed in LSU on line 32 to 35. So when you get an LSU on day 10 or before, check line 32 to 35. They need to be checked yes or non-applicable. And if they're not, freaking cure them. Buyer agrees to work diligently to obtain a loan, etc., and do all the documentation that the lender requires. Because in this day and time, if they don't have their tax returns to the lender by day 10 and you're trying to close in 30, you got a problem. Type of financing, just make sure you check the right box. Conventional FHA. USDA is pretty much non-existent in Maricopa County anymore, but it's still out there. Assumption, seller carryback, or other. Now, I've had people put other there and put hard money. Hard money is a cash deal. Section 2 does not apply to it. Even if they said, well, I wrote it in, that does not mean anything, okay? You can't sneak hard money in. If you want a contingency, say on appraisal and receipt of hard money, you write that in Section 8. I've actually seen people put in there to be determined. How do you get an LSU based on a TBD loan? Lazy agent. All right, loan cost. It is the default position that the buyer pays all loan costs. Any exception to that has to be dealt with in Section 2J or Section 8. Now, Section 2J is a time bomb. It's a landmine. It's a source of great consternation and disgruntlement in my world. And here's why. Because agents have no idea what the hell it says, and people have not caught on to the change. We really changed this thing a lot. In the old days, seller concessions, it became, I don't know where it came from. 40 years in the business, 35 of those, I'd never even heard of seller concessions. Okay? It's a new animal. It's a new thing. I don't get it. Or not 35, 25 of those. They started in the early 2000s. Seller concessions are a new thing. And somebody came up with this magic number. I don't know where they got it from. I'm guessing they used the rectal retrieval method one day way back when and came up with 3%, which is great. Now, it literally means that everyone's paying 97% of what they're really paying. You realize a concession is a drop in seller net. So people say, well, you got your purchase price. I said, purchase price literally should mean nothing to a seller. The only thing that should mean anything to the seller is what you have on the bottom of the net sheet you prepared them. And yes, you should do a cost net sheet for every contract you receive before you ever present it to the seller. I say that because 90% of agents have no freaking clue how to even do a net sheet. Shame on us. Huh?
Really?
Yeah. I have agents all the time ask me what a net sheet is. I have agents that have the pre-audit requirement and SkySlope that ask me what a pre-audit is. I had an agent been in business quite a while that said, "What's a pre-audit?" I said, "That's the settlement statement they send you to review before closing, which you're required to check the math on every one on every deal." He goes, "I've never done that. Why would I do that?" I'm like, "Because it's it's part of your license. You realize we are required to audit every pre-audit, to get a calculator out and check the stinking numbers." Nobody does it. Doesn't mean just because you don't do it. But here's what they did. That 3% before this change, and I have a friend who works at a title company, and he hated this because title companies want to be literal. They want to be black and white. They want to be yes, no. They want to be binary. By the way, we want them to be that way. We don't want them to think. We want them to do exactly what this thing tells them to do without exception. No gray. But they would, someone would come in, their concessions were 3%, and the total cost of loan and closing was only 2.45. So they'd throw a home warranty in there, they'd screw around with the HOA fees, and they'd find a way for the set buyer to spend all that 3%. And I've had sellers have a problem with that. I don't know why a seller would ever care. If you accept an offer with a 97% net, why the hell do you care what happens to give you that net? Why would you think, well, no, I want more because, no. But we changed it.
That's what it says up to.
Huh?
That's what it says up to.
Yeah, and well now,
Right.
we have a real problem because we threw a word in here because title companies didn't want to do that. They asked us, can you clarify the list and be maximum specificity about what a buyer can use concessions towards? And this is what it says. In addition to other costs sellers agree to pay herein, by the way, other costs sellers agree to pay herein. That's my Section 8 clause I'm going to talk about. A seller agrees to pay up to X% of the purchase price or dollars. Always use percent because percent is a dynamic number. Once you put an actual dollar in there, that's static. So if you change the purchase price $5,000, you're not changing the concession relative. The concession would stay the same. So I like percentages. Up to be used, circle the word only for buyer's loan costs, impounds, title costs, recording fees applicable, VA loan non-allows. That does not add up to 3%. When we first did this contract, I did Skype and whatever, and went to offices of lenders all over town and made sure they understood the difference. Because we did the math, I did the math with the lender, I did it myself, that's 1.8 to 2.2% max. Which means, unless you do something else, you're at 3% here, that seller is getting a 0.8% bonus at closing. Your buyer gives a seller a bonus at closing, they're going to be pissed at you. I mean, I've seen a buyer go completely bananas over $50. They literally were $50 short of their concessions. And this is in the old day. The lender only allowed 3%. That was the lender's rules. They literally could not get that extra $50. It wasn't allowed. But whew, they went nuts. If you're going to just use this clause, you get your lender on the phone, you say, I need to know exactly how much the costs that you come up with on the loan estimate are, all closing costs that fall under this list, and then if that comes up to 1.75%, make it 1.76. Okay, pad it maybe $1. Or do what I do. Jump to Section 8 and expand the list. Seller to contribute X% in addition to cost agreed to in Section 2J. Seller shall contribute X% towards buyer's acquisition cost. Why do I use the word acquisition cost? It's every damn penny they spend inside, outside to buy that house, including but not limited to closing, loan costs, prepaids, all items checked paid by buyer in this contract and or outside of escrow by reimbursement at COE. And in my case, and balance of buyer broker fee, because if my buyer broker fee is greater than the co-broke and there's any concession money left, it comes to me. Cost my buyer nothing, and trust me, your buyer would rather go to you than to the seller. Cover it. There's no way that's not going to eat up 3%. And why 3%? It should be the max, is lenders have rules, they do not allow concessions over 3% in most cases. There's programs out there that will allow 3.5%, there's programs out there that only allow 2%. Make sure when you do concessions, you have the number from your lender. I hear people all the time say, well, we just always ask for a 3% concession. I say, why? Why just always done it that way? I'm like, okay. Jeffrey Dahmer's always eating people. Doesn't make it smarter, good. You know, Jeffrey Dahmer's eating 5 guys long before it was a restaurant, just for the record. Oh, cannibal humor. Come on, can't laugh at eating people. What can you laugh at? Oh, let's see. Yeah, you ever heard this spoof song, you know, Barbra Streisand's People Who Need People? A comedy, People Who Eat People. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. It's not Weird Al, but it's very Weird Al-esque. I recommend you watch it. It's dressed up like, you know, the headhunters back in the day, you know, in South Pacific. No, yeah, it's awesome and horrible at the same time. All right, changes in escrow. Section 2K. Quite possibly the most misunderstood clause in the entire contract. And my friends, that's saying a lot. Section 2K. Buyers shall immediately notify seller of any changes to the loan program, financing terms, or lender, other than anything that's different than the pre-qual delivery, which means that they go from conventional to FHA or vice versa, FHA to VA, whatever, any change, you must be disclosed to the seller, to the listing agent immediately. Just disclosed. But you do not need the seller's permission. You do have to disclose, and the reason you have to disclose, I'm going to give you a case law to read. It's not a tough read, but it's highly educational. Lombardo v. Albu, A-L-B-U. Scottsdale National Precedent Setting case, and it's why you should tell. Okay, because the seller has a right to know anything that's going to be a problem. But it comes with conditions here, and this is where people get it wrong. The LSU, whatever, within 10 days contract acceptance, she'll make, okay, LSU friends, and she'll only make any such changes without prior consent, okay? If you're going to make changes and you don't want to fall into the trap here, you have to get consent. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. If such changes do not adversarially affect buyer's ability to obtain loan approval without prior doc conditions. When you change lenders, when you change loan programs, you are essentially removing the contingency upon qualifying. I've had people argue that. I've had title companies that have 100% of the time given the money to the seller. But I'm amazed. I've had time. The 3 times I've done this in the last 2 years, I've literally, well, I didn't do it. I fought it on behalf of agents. I literally had the title company, this big title company, say, you're the only person that's ever done this. You're the only seller that's ever requested earnest money forfeiture for non-qualification from the second lender. And the buyer's agent went bananas. They literally, to this day, refer to me with foul language and call me that, you know what, that stole their buyer's earnest money. I didn't steal their buyer's earnest money. He gave it away by having them change loan programs without getting seller consent. If you're going to change loan programs, your buyer needs to understand that if they don't qualify, they got denied by one lender, so they jumped to another lender. And when the second lender denied them, they went back to the original loan and said, well, this loan denial is still good. No, it's not. As soon as you send over that pre-qual, that first lender is gone. They never existed. Anything from them doesn't mean anything. So here's what you do. Create an addendum that says, buyer's new lender shall be, buyer per attached pre-qual, XYZ lender, whatever. All terms of section 2 shall apply to the new lender program, whatever. Move the contingency with you. Now, if you do that for one of my listings, guess what am I going to tell you to do? Go jump in a lake. I'm not going to let my seller sign that. People say, your seller has to sign this addendum. An addendum is a request. No seller ever has to sign anything. Okay? Once they've signed a contract, an addendum is a renegotiation. It's a change of terms. They don't have to agree to that. But I've never had a listing agent that was smart enough to tell me to jump in a lake. They actually let the damn seller sign it. And my buyer gets her earnest money protected again. And if they say, nope, you know they know what they're doing, and you tell the buyer, you know what, you better close this deal, because if you don't, you're probably going to lose earnest money. But the title companies I've done it with, one was, I'll reference my name, because I talked to basically the boss of the whole shop. was Fidelity Title. Now, Fidelity Title is a big title company. They do a lot of deals. This was 2 years ago. I was the first agent and this was my deal. Oh, it was one of my deals. I was the first agent who they'd ever seen request earnest money forfeiture under Section 2K. Which means buyer's agents, listing agents out there, because they don't know what the freaking contract says, are not even getting their seller the earnest money when they're entitled to it. We now know better. But really, if you got the buyer, do the addendum. I've never had an agent not sign it. And then I laugh, I'm like, you're such an idiot. You just gave my buyer their chance to get their earnest money back when you owned it yesterday. All righty, ready. Appraisal contingency. Buyer's obligation to complete this sale is contingent upon appraisal of premise acceptable to the lender for at least the purchase price. The appraiser works for the lender. They don't work for the buyer. And it's a stretch to say they work for the lender, because who they're really working for, who benefits from them doing their job correctly, is the investor that buys the paper on that house. Appraisers are very tight right now. They should be. Let me piss everyone on the internet, you guys off. Appraisers are never wrong, period. They're paid not to be. And as part of their job description, I don't give a damn what we think. Can you request a review appraisal? Absolutely. Sometimes did they miss a comp? When it comes right down to it, the number they give is the number. And this business ridiculous statement that the value of a home is negotiated between buyer and seller, what a seller's willing to pay and a buyer's willing to get, only applies to cash deals. Because in most deals, the person who has the most skin in the game is not the closing table. They're just writing a check from Philly or someplace for that loan. And they're the ones taking the majority of risk. That appraiser works for them. That's good. All right, at least the purchase price. If the premises fails to appraise for the purchase price in any appraisal required by the lender, buyer has 5 days after notice of appraised value to cancel the contract, receive a refund of earnest money, or the appraisal contingency will be construed waived by time unless otherwise prohibited by federal law. If an appraisal comes in low, we see it all the time. People go, well, I want a review appraisal. I want a new appraisal. You must do an addendum extending the 5 days to the end of the review appraisal. We had a buyer lose their earnest money because they didn't like the appraisal. So the seller demanded a review appraisal. They got the review appraisal. It came in, but it came in like 15 days after receipt of the initial. That 5 days has nothing to do with review appraisal. It has to do with the one appraisal required by the lender. So if you're going back and fighting, you need to get more time. And I think that was really crappy what that seller did. And I know their agent set that up. I guarantee he did it on purpose. And our client loss was only $1,000, but it's $1,000 those people probably didn't want to lose. So make sure that you understand. You can do review appraisal. Hell, you can do 19 review appraisals, but the only time frame that applies is 5 days after receipt of appraisal number 1. Right on. Appraisal costs paid by the buyer or seller, typically by the buyer, to be paid at the time required by lender. It's not a bad idea to counter all transactions. Appraisal will be paid for within 3 days of acceptance. People are saying, well, I don't want to pay for the appraisal until the inspection is removed. The inspection contingency can be 24 days. Seller should not have to wait 24 days for the inspection to be removed and then wait another week and a half to find out it did not appraise. Buyer needs to put some money up. They need to put some skin in the game. Pardon me. All right. And appraisal fee will or will not be applied towards concessions, etc. If buyer's lender requires updated appraisal prior to see, would be formed at buyer's expense. Any appraisal required inspections should be paid for by the buyer. So the lender can require an extra appraisal paid for by the buyer, but it has nothing to do with the contingency in Section 2L. Okay? Any questions? Cool. How are we doing time-wise? 4:15. All right. We're going to start Section 3 and get through some of the meat and potatoes. First of all, Section 3A. These are blanks. You know what brokers don't like? Blanks. We want to see these little things called words there. And the reason people don't put words here is because they're lazy. The one that scares me the most, how can you rationally tell a buyer to put to be determined for the escrow company? I guarantee there's an escrow company in town that I will not use. If I represent, if the seller's agent says we're going to use this title company, no, pick a third one. No, you don't have to use the one we put on the contract. We'll fight over it. There's title company in town I will not use. Murphy's Law says if I put to be determined there, or even my favorites, up to the seller's choice, they're going to go to that one title company. And I don't like this title company use them because I have 100 situations where they've released earnest money to the party that shouldn't have gotten it because it's the person that gives them lots of business. That's completely unethical and inappropriate, but it happens. Anyone, you ever been on the downside of that? I have. I'm like, it's black and white the buyer gets their money back. No, we're giving it to the seller. Or it's so clear the seller gets the money. Well, no, our legal department didn't do that. The escrow officer said, make this better because this guy gives us 40 deals a month. Yeah, it's horrible. But see that? Fill it out. Put in the name. Put in the address. Put in the city. Put in the state. Put in the email address of the escrow officer. Put in the phone number. Put in the fax. I don't know. I haven't sent a fax in 4 years. I'm not even sure I know how to do it anymore.
So title has control of that?
Huh?
Title has control of giving the earnest money even though...
Absolute authority. They are God when it comes to earnest money decision making.
I thought they're neutral parties.
They are. And they're going to say, we're neutral. We're making a neutral, I use the term nonpartisan for, because they're not on either side, nonpartisan decision. And it's supposed to be completely objective, not taking sides, nonpartisan, but we want them to have that authority because the problem is, what happens when you give people power? You give them the opportunity to abuse that power. And there's a lot of title companies and escrow officers that have, for lack of a better term, incestuous relationships with agents because they're really there's two words you should never say in your vocabulary. My title company. My title. If you have my title, no, it's my preferred title because they're really, part of their job is to protect their client from me. Fill it out. In fact, I love fax. Faxes were so last millennium. Now, who chooses the title company? Well, the buyer. Is title company negotiable? Yeah, whether we like it or not, yeah. Is it worth the fight? Only if you're really sure that the title company they're going to use is bad. And here's my deal when I want to argue for the title company that I have preferred. I have my escrow officer's resume. And I'll give you my escrow officer's resume. They work for a company that's worth about $140 billion, so that company's going to be good. I like large national. I like, all the companies under the Fidelity. Obviously, those are companies, the Fidelity umbrella, those are companies that are very likely to be here tomorrow financially. First American Title, very likely to be here tomorrow financially. Chicago Title, the big dogs. But I say, here's my resume. The company's good. If your escrow officer has a better resume than mine, let's use it. And I will only use escrow officers that have a resume that would qualify them to be the CEO of their company. The one person in this world that you should want to know everything about is an escrow officer you give business to. Because much like real estate companies, there's nothing good or bad about my home group. My home group is very much irrelevant in the day-to-day practice. You agree with that? This company doesn't sell houses. Whether or not we're good or bad depends on whether our agents are good or bad. You guys are the ones doing the business, okay? So company's somewhat irrelevant. It's all about the person doing the daily task. Every real estate company has great agents and bad agents, okay? Every title company has good escrow officers and bad escrow officers. Ask, say, oh good, you want to have them send me their resume. You go, well, you're not allowed to ask that. Yes, I am. I want to protect my client by making sure they're dealing only with the highest qualified people. I say, here's my escrow officer's resume, by the way. I win that one every time. He's no longer an escrow officer. He went back upstairs to be a boss again, but he's been in business for 35 years. He literally has run large title companies. He just went back to escrow because he missed people. Now, 3 years later, he's sick of people. He's going back upstairs. No, that's not why. But yeah, it's worth it. Fill it out. Title investing. This is huge. Buyer will take title as determined before close of escrow. If buyer is married and intends to take title as his or her sole separate property, a disclaimer deed may. Throw may out. Absolutely will be required. Anytime something in the contract says may, we treat it as an absolute. Because I don't know, you guys, I don't want to deal in mays. I want to deal in wins. I don't like ifs. I want to deal in wins. So, taking title may have certificate of state obtaining, etc. Buyer should obtain it independently. When tax advice, we can't give tax advice. We can't advise them how to take title. But here's what we can do. If you represent a buyer and this is a requirement, okay? If you represent a seller, this is a requirement. Either side, I'm going to require that the disclaimer deed be signed during the inspection period. That protects everyone. Okay? This really happened in 3 different formats, but I'm going to tell you about the freakiest of the freak. We had a lady, our client, nice house, big earnest money. I think it was 10 grand. So we're talking real money. He's down to close, completely qualified. Her loan is good. She had one condition from the lender, which came from title. She needed a disclaimer deed from her husband. And I'm going to have some fun with this, because just picture this woman getting that phone call and to be on the phone with her and her going, holy crap, I forgot I was married. She's been set apart for decades, has no idea if the guy's alive or dead, where he is. They just never bothered to, their marriage was dead. They just never bothered to get the death certificate, a thing called a divorce. She couldn't close. She lost her earnest money. And that one broke my heart. On the other hand, it gives me one of the funniest stories I'll ever tell in real estate. Because anybody here ever been married? How the hell do you forget being married? Now, do I wish I could forget my marriages? Yeah, but oh no, I'm never going to forget them. And the other one, the other situation, and this is where it comes up more often. I bet in my career I never come across a person that forgot they were married again. That was a first, and hopefully a last. The other one happens all the time. Now, Natasha and I are married, but we're getting divorced. And she's really cool. Our divorce is happy. And she's like, I'm gonna go buy a house. She goes, okay. I said, I want to close before the divorce is final. Will you sign off on the disclaimer deed? And she's like, well, of course I will. And this has happened twice in this office in the last year. Anybody ever, if you've ever been through a divorce, that you have happy days and bad, ugly days. Well, so we get through the process and our lawyers start having conversations, and all of a sudden she gets the idea that I'm not really doing right by her. So it comes down to closing, and we send her a disclaimer deed. She goes, you know, John, I feel like you screwed me in the divorce. You're a horrible person, a horrible husband. I'm not signing it unless you throw me a few $1,000s. See, it happened twice. And in both cases, one was a seller, one was a buyer. One was a man, one was a woman. They got the extra money because the buyer was they're either not going to be able to sell their house or they're going to lose their earnest money. Deal with it during the inspection period, because if you ain't got it, you can't close.
So on the buying side, you have to still get a disclaimer or quick claim?
Well, sure, because if I'm married, the day that house closes, she owns, my girl Natasha here owns half of it. I mean, no, yeah. And it is a, you'd think that's a no-brainer. But if I've dealt with it in a company with this in the last couple of years, so averaging 1,000 agents, if I've had to see it happen 3 times a year, then that's more common than you think. All right, I'm not going to get into title and CC&R. That's a half hour right there. I think we're going to call it quits right here. We will pick up section 3C, and next time we should be able to get section 3 and 4, because 4 is complicated, but it's not that complicated. Any questions? See you in 2 weeks for all things contract.
Thank you.
I think.
The HOA document, I have seen the second page is filled.